so at risk. But before I do go there, let me just draw the link between remembrance and care for our veterans and their families. I can think of no more powerful way of honouring those who lie in foreign fields or who have been affected by the wars in our past than to ensure that we serve the living. That is our core task, people helping people, and we dishonour rather than honour the dead if we fall short in that. And it's against that task that we come to the greatest change that has occurred in the affairs of veterans in recent years, a seismic shift, if those from Canterbury will forgive the expression. I know that some in the ex-service community are tired of hearing about Vietnam veterans and the MOU of 2006. But love it or resent it, the fact remains that it and associated actions broke open a door that had been locked for too long and began processes that would change the landscape for veterans and indeed for all who have served and their families. There were many hands in this, of course, not just the RNZRSA, but contrary to assumption by some, we see once again that the collective influence of the ex-service sector is not in fact fading away. Without that influence, we would not have had the amalgamation of the two separate parts of Veterans Affairs, nor the case managers who are now making such a positive difference to the delivery of services. We would not have had the expert panel, whose true value will not become clear until the new legislation is in place. And we would certainly not have had the new legislation project itself. It is that project that is the linchpin. It is no simple matter, first to accept and then to do something about the backwater of neglect into which our veteran support legislation had fallen. That task has dominated all else for the last couple of years. And as you know, the Law Commission's report was tabled in the House on the 1st of June. I do wish to thank Sir Geoffrey Palmer and the Law Commission for the efforts that he and his people have put into the task. As his latest assignment in the Middle East testifies, he is not averse to accepting a challenge. I suspect that the challenge of repairing our veteran support legislation was not particularly evident at the beginning, since the scale and depth of the effects of neglect emerged only later. As they did emerge, it became more and more obvious not only that the project would take longer than had been hoped, but also that it needed to take longer because of the importance of getting it right. I'm very grateful to Sir Geoffrey for engaging the RSA both at grassroots level and at national level so thoroughly. Naturally, his considered report and our desire did not match in every respect, and there are points still to be resolved. But I can assure everyone here that the Law Commission did do us the courtesy of considering seriously all that we and other petitioners suggested, and of spending many, many hours trying to smooth layer after layer of tension in as even-handed a manner as possible, and I thank him genuinely for that. In saying this, I'm mindful, and you should be too, that there will be further opportunity to make our points direct to the lawmakers as due constitutional processes unfold. Now let me finally come back to something I touched upon earlier. Let us not lose sight of the advantages of an orderly, responsible and rational approach to all things. And let us not lose sight of the singularly great advantage of speaking with a coherent or unified voice. It is in this area that we may need seriously to examine our soul. We are a federal organisation of independently incorporated societies, each able to take its own decision according to local circumstance and without interference from anybody. That is right and proper and is not at issue. Our membership is holding steady at around 116,000, a gratifying fact which is surprising to some. But that is not where our greatest strength lies. Rather, it lies in our presence in most communities across the country. Our local RSAs are the core, whether large or small. Indeed, it's not outrageous to say that our real strength lies in the small rather than the large. And I've been privileged in recent times to visit and see this borne out in such places as Alexandra, Harry, Waipu, Kawakawa, Pairoa, Hobsonville and Helensville, to name but a few. They are true RSA country. Without all local RSAs, including these, the RSA movement is nothing. Likewise, without the central body of the RNZRSA, we would be headless. And there's an obvious mutual dependency here. Each of us belongs collectively to something larger than ourselves, and it is that larger thing that is our strength, not individual components acting individually. Together we're a force for good in our communities and for the nation. Later in this council we will be teasing out some of these thoughts. Let us ensure that we hand over to the incoming leadership a commitment to maximising our collective strengths and to avoiding breaking or weakening them on apparent assumptions that everything can be locally judged, or that local autonomy is a licence to forget the broader interests of the association as a whole. We can and must think locally, but we can and must also act globally. We owe this not just to those we honour from the past, but also to our own future. Now, in closing, let me remind you that I'm not the only one standing down from national executive positions this year. Brian Emerson of Hawke's Bay has called it time. Chris Mullane and Gary Walker, both of Auckland, will also move on to other things. I thank them for their contributions over the years, as I'm sure you do too. We have achieved much in the last decade or so. There is more to be done, and for my part, I will remain willing to assist where I can, although not in my current capacity. I wish the incoming leadership the best of good fortune and success in carrying the flag to all generations. Thank you. Now, when we talk about carrying the flag to all generations, we have ample evidence each Anzac Day that young New Zealanders want to carry it too. This year, together with a group of fellow veterans as well as youth representatives, as we've heard, I had the privilege to be at Gallipoli for the 95th anniversary commemorations. One of the enduring memories of that trip, apart from the devastating task of informing the veterans of the tragic news from home, was to witness firsthand the impact of that very special place on our young New Zealanders and the dignified manner in which they remembered those who would never return. One of those representatives was your representative, Megan Lee of Maclean's College, Auckland, the inaugural winner of the National Bank RSA Cyril Bassett VC speech competition. I'm delighted to announce this evening that due to the success of this year's competition, the National Bank has extended their partnership with the RSA for this purpose for a further 5 years to 2015. This will, of course, enable a deeper understanding and appreciation of the sacrifices made by Cyril Bassett, our one and only VC at Gallipoli, and the many other New Zealanders who have served their country. It will enable us to ensure that the torch of remembrance is passed to new generations. With that, it gives me great pleasure to invite Megan Lee to the stage to deliver the speech that won her the 2010 National Bank RSA Cyril Bassett VC speech competition.